Good evening and welcome to On the Record. I'm your host Adam Jasa. It's been 1,000 days since Russia launched a bloody war on Ukraine. In Warsaw, foreign ministers of Poland, Germany, France, Italy, Spain and the United Kingdom issued a declaration condemning Russia. In contrast, leaders of Hungary and Slovakia repeated Moscow's talking points, just as Russian missiles rained on Ukrainian cities. Whether the Czech Republic becomes the next Central European nation to bow before Russian imperialism depends on one man, Andrej Babiš.
In recent days, butter has emerged as a hot political topic in the Czech Republic. The surging price of the commodity is dealing a fresh blow to the beleaguered government of centrist Prime Minister Petr Fiala, whose fragile four-party coalition appears destined to lose next year's parliamentary elections. Fiala has pointed the finger at Andrej Babiš, the billionaire businessman turned politician, whose agribusiness empire has a strong hold on the dairy market. Babiš, whose ANO party is leading in the polls with a significant margin, responded by calling the Prime Minister a fool who does not understand the basic rules of supply and demand. The spat over butter is just one facet of a much larger battle for power, one that has defined Babiš's controversial rise and enduring presence in Czech politics. Born in Bratislava, Slovakia, and later naturalized as a Czech citizen, Babiš built his fortune during the chaotic privatization of the 1990s. He founded Agrofert, a sprawling conglomerate that now controls significant portions of the agricultural, chemical, and media sectors. By 2011, he entered politics, launching ANO, short for Action of the Satisfied Citizens, a movement that promised to clean up corruption and bring a business-minded approach to the government. His rise was swift. Babiš became Prime Minister in 2017, styling himself as a pragmatic technocrat who could get things done where traditional politicians had failed. But his tenure was dogged by allegations of corruption, conflicts of interest, and accusations that he was a secret police agent during the communist era, an assertion he had vehemently denied. The controversies led to his defeat in the 2021 elections. Now, Babiš is plotting his return. Modeling his campaign on Hungary's Viktor Orbán and Slovakia's Robert Fico, he has steered his rhetoric sharply to the right, tapping into growing Euroscepticism on issues like the green transition, migration, and EU support for Ukraine. Babiš formed an alliance with Orbán and Austria's Freedom Party in a new European Parliament called Patriots for Europe. The group's agenda, as Babiš himself put it, is clear.
We are here together because we are united by three main priorities that will define our policy in the European Union: the defense of sovereignty, the fight against illegal migration, and the revision of the Green Deal.
Babiš has sought to align himself with Orbán, Fico, and other Russia-friendly leaders as the EU's peace party, distancing himself from Ukraine and its Western backers, whom he blames for risking a wider outbreak of a conflict. Like them, he welcomed Donald Trump's election victory as a prelude to peace, even though it may force Ukraine to cede territory and abandon its NATO aspirations.
The American people have made it clear who they want as president. I am confident his victory will bring prosperity to the United States and peace to the world.
While Babiš insists he is not pro-Russian, critics remain unconvinced.
It's amusing how desperately Babiš tries to claim that his new group is not pro-Russian. I have seen no shift in Fidesz or FPU's stance on Ukraine aid. We will keep repeating, Patriots for Europe is actually Russia everything for you.
As the war in Ukraine grinds on and Europe struggles to maintain unity, Babiš's return could further embolden a bloc that challenges Western cohesion. For Vladimir Putin, that would be a gift.
To talk about the war of words over butter and its more serious consequences, I'm joined today by Kateryna Szafardzikova, European Affairs Specialist at Respect Weekly in Prague, and also from Prague, Robert Anderson, Chief News Editor at BNE Intelligent News covering Central and Eastern Europe. Good evening and welcome to both of you.
Good evening.
Kateryna, if I may start with you, who is right regarding the price of butter?
None. So not Babiš and not the government. I think it's very much related to the market situation in the Czech Republic. I mean, I don't want to bore you with details, but the truth is there's no conspiracy behind it, but it really is related to the market, the dairy situation in the Czech Republic.
Okay, but what does it tell us about the political situation in the Czech Republic and the struggle that Mr. Babiš is undertaking to return to power?
Okay, it basically is telling us we will have general elections in 1 year, and the people are quite unhappy with the situation as it is. They feel, I'm not saying it is true, but they feel that, you know, they have less of a resources, that the economic situation has worsened since last year, and that is the current government to play, so to be blamed. So that's basically it. And the battle or debate is just like a symptom of it.
Right. Robert, we saw in the report that Mr. Babiš was once accused of being a communist-era collaborator, something he has denied. But across the ex-communist countries, we have seen capitalist fortunes rising during the post-communist era, and very often involving representatives of the old regimes. But few decided to use this economic power to enter politics. Why isn't that bothering his supporters in Czech Republic, Mr. Babiš's supporters, that he's an oligarch, effectively?
Yes, Andrej Babiš is unusual in Central Europe in that he is an oligarch who has entered politics. Usually, of course, oligarchs prefer to stand behind the politicians and pull the strings. He has stood out front, founding his own party and, you know, becoming a finance minister and then prime minister. He admits to being a Communist Party member, of course. He denies being a secret police informer. This is something that the Slovak institute, which has the communist secret police files, says he was. But there has recently been a decision by the Slovak government to drop this case and to essentially allow Babis to deny that he is an agent. So
but he was part of the communist establishment. There is no doubt about it, right?
Definitely, he was part of the establishment. He worked for a communist trading organization. He clearly was part of the nomenclatura. But of course, many Czechs were. So this is something that doesn't distract from his popularity among his supporters.
Why it doesn't?
As I said, because a lot of Czechs were involved in the Communist Party in various ways. He doesn't defend that, but he just says, "I was one of you," and this is something that his supporters these days don't think is important.
Right. Katerina, to what extent is this a threat to democracy, these oligarchic structures popping up across Central and Eastern Europe? And we see, you know, some of the other billionaires around the world are now also trying to get closer to power. Is this a risk in smaller countries such as Czech Republic or Slovakia earlier or Hungary?
It is indeed a risk, as we can see in Slovakia or Hungary, as you rightly mentioned. But I would underline that unlike Slovakia or unlike Hungary, we are lucky here in the Czech Republic that our other institutions are quite strong. And by mentioning other institutions, I mean Constitutional Court, for example, or judicial system at large, police, and so forth. So our institution, I think, and the president as well, are strong enough to sort of withhold any possible attack of
Katerina, I heard that story before. I had it in Poland in 2015. I had it in Slovakia a year ago, and we obviously had that in Hungary as well. So, and everywhere in those countries, we witnessed state capture, undermining independence of these institutions, and so on and so forth. So, what makes you so confident that the Czech Republic is different?
Well, I think we have some breaks in the constitutional system that protect us first, and second, in the past we've seen cases where be it either the constitutional court or the president, has indeed withstand the political pressure. It doesn't mean it will be like this forever. You're right, it can always turn bad, like in Slovakia or Hungary. But so far, our past 20 years even are sort of a proof and evidence that our institutions are quite strong.
Robert, let me return for a second to the question of oligarchic power, if you will. It seemed initially that in Central and Eastern Europe, once these countries joined the EU, there was not really that much space for that kind of marriage between business and power, because it's a rules-based order, transparency, and so forth. And I'm just wondering, maybe this whole Euroscepticism of Mr. Babiš now, it's partly related to the fact that the EU gets in the way of this kind of behavior, just like in Hungary and Slovakia?
Yeah, I think that's very true. The oligarchs do see the European Union as a threat to their monopolistic power in the various countries in Central Europe. We're talking about energy, we're talking about telecoms in the Czech Republic especially. They don't like the way that Europe will break up the cozy deals they've reached with the politicians. I think it's worth pointing out in terms of Babis that obviously oligarchs have always been powerful in the Czech Republic. They are perhaps, compared to the other countries in the region, they are the most powerful. They're the wealthiest, the longest established. The thing that's unusual about this, as I said before, was that he came out in front of a political party. In the other countries in Central Europe, I get the sense, I mean, Katerina may differ, that the oligarchs are not so powerful. I mean, in Hungary, of course, they have been built up by Viktor Orbán himself. They're very much under him. Poland doesn't seem to have the strong oligarchs of the other countries because of the way you didn't privatize your industries in the 1990s. And in Slovakia, the oligarchs are kind of smaller. I mean, they're still powerful, but they don't quite have the financial muscle of the ones in the Czech Republic. So I think the Czech Republic, although it might seem the most Western maybe of the countries in the region, it actually has the most powerful oligarchs. And I think this is something that's not understood very well.
So that's a paradox, right, in some sense, because in a sense, as you rightly point out, the Czech Republic may be the most established, strong institutions and all of that, but at the same time it managed to grow a group of very powerful oligarchs, one of whom is actually trying to be prime minister again. So what's next?
In
yes,
my opinion,
please.
He is very likely to become prime minister next autumn. The opinion polls that we're seeing at the moment give him support above 35%, which is way more than the parties in the government all put together. He also has the advantage of a couple of opposition parties who are likely to join with him. One is the far-right party of Tomio Okamura. The other is the Communist Party, which has come back and is now polling above 5%. It's currently not in the parliament. So he has some willing coalition partners, potential ones. And I think he is very likely to use that. Maybe they won't be in the government with him, but they could support his government. The other possibility, which is speculated about by Czech commentators, of course, is that the current leading party in the government, the ODS, which is a right-wing party, may change its leader and potentially work with Mr. Babis. There were some voices in that party who apparently are talking about this. So I think he has many options. It's very likely that he will be the next prime minister. If he does enter power, he's got lots of things on his agenda. He opposes the Green Deal. He wants to push back on that. I think he wants to get control of Czech TV, something he failed to do in his first term in power. But as we know from Poland, getting control of the public broadcaster is essential for these populist authoritarians. And I think he also, still wants to do the things he did in his first term, protect his own business, work deals with the other oligarchs. So I think he has lots of unfinished business.
Right. Katerina, if I may ask you, if I understand right, Mr. Babiš used to be part of the liberal grouping in the European Parliament. So what happened to his views? And this sort of reflected his pro-business agenda. And suddenly he veered to the right. So he aligns himself with groups that very often are pro-Moscow. So what happens to the Czech Republic's firm stance on Ukraine if he becomes prime minister?
Yes. So first, what happened with Babiš is that his electorate has changed over the last 8 years, say. First, he started with a middle-class, pro-business, pro-EU, quite westernized population, and sort of as a thanks to or due to his rhetorics, the electorate or the supporters have changed. So he now has more anti-EU, anti-West, even anti-capitalism supporters. So,
but he's a capitalist himself.
That's one of the paradoxes. I mean, if you look at Andrej Babiš, he is full of paradox, and you can talk for hours with the supporters about it, but still at the end of the day, they would love him. One of the paradox is he manages to present himself as a ordinary, common Czech on the street, which he is not in any possible, sense or any possible terms. As Robert rightly mentioned, he was part of the nomenclatura in the former regime. Now he is a billionaire, and which is not certainly the case of most Czechs. Not an average Czech person, but still he sort of manages to present himself like this. He has this appeal to, he attaches well with the population at large. So that's one of the things. So his supporters have changed, they shifted a bit. He realized that the liberal grouping in the European Parliament, it's maybe too narrow. He would have to, make a lot of compromises, which he doesn't like. He would have to, at certain levels, support the Green Deal. So he has decided to exit liberal grouping and to be part of the Patriots, which allows him to criticize the EU night and day, 7 days a week, still get the money and the attention from the EU and be in line with his current electorate, current supporters. And concerning Ukraine, yes, I mean, that's a real question, because if he becomes a prime minister again, if he leads the government again, the big question is, will our current support to Ukraine continue or will it stop? And it's very difficult to predict. So far, Anna movement has supported most of the governmental steps in favor of Ukraine. But again, it also depends on what the potential coalition partners of Babiš would prefer, would like. So this is really an open question mark. It's an open question, really.
Right. Robert, so to what extent do you think he will be constrained, if he becomes prime minister, by the need to form this coalition government, most likely, with whoever, and then contend also with a staunchly pro-Ukraine president, Mr. Petr Pavel?
Yeah, I don't think Ukraine has been a big issue for Babis up till now. Of course, he makes kind of noises about how we're all tired of the war and the cost of the support of Ukraine, but it's not. He doesn't talk about it in the same way that Fico or Orban do. I think where this might change would be, of course, with the arrival of Trump, who obviously acts as an inspiration for all these populist liberal politicians in our region. And obviously, if Trump moves towards some kind of so-called peace deal, I think Babis will follow and support that, definitely. I don't think he's got any constraints from his potential coalition partners, unless perhaps he joins with the ODS, which is a kind of outside chance, really. Petr Pavel, you're right, is a constraint. The Czech president has a foreign policy role. Pavel has been one of the most outspoken supporters of Ukraine. So I think if Babis was to move, in Orban's direction in a big way, I think Pavel there would be a confrontation, and that would be something to watch, yes.
So this is what Katerina earlier described as these checks and balances that still should hold in the Czech Republic, right? Okay, but just for the sake of argument, is it, I'm just, when I look at the contrasting approach of, let's say, Hungary and Slovakia, and then Poland and Romania to Ukraine, I'm just wondering if the smaller countries in Central and Eastern Europe aren't simply hedging their bets. And maybe now the Czech Republic will join Slovakia and Hungary in hedging their bets.
I mean, it's
Katerina,
difficult to say.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I should have said that. Katerina, please.
I mean, it's really, in a way, difficult to predict. Look, if we stick with Babiš, if you look at him or if you know him, he's somebody who is very, I'd say, selfish and who likes to be respected among what he calls the big boys. And if you say the big boys, he obviously means the tycoons of business, but also various heads of states and government. So one of the appeal of the liberal grouping in the European Parliament or in Europe at large was that he got seated next to Emmanuel Macron, and he could have his mobile phone and call him anytime, basically. And if he gets pressed by those big boys, heads of states and governments, probably then, he will retreat in a way, that he would make compromises and he would not get engaged in this wild world of not supporting Ukraine and supporting Putin, etc. So
he will follow the dominant narrative.
And his interests. I mean, he is someone who really follows his personal interest, be it in business, be it in politics, or be it in politics because of his business. So if he does the accounting exercise and he sees that, well, continuing the criticism of our stance towards Ukraine would benefit him, would benefit his business, he would certainly continue doing it. If it's the other way, the opposite, I think he would change the course.
Right.
Like that.
So, the Central European unity, once so strong when it came to geopolitics, if you will, is permanently shattered now with, let's say, Slovakia and Hungary and possibly Czech Republic playing a more ambiguous game, and then Poland aligning with the Nordic countries and the Baltic states. Is this the future, or can this be still reversed? Robert, please.
I would definitely agree. I think Poland is, as I wrote in a piece for our website this week, Poland is stepping up into a new role with having the European presidency next year, and Trump, given the vacuum in European leadership from France and Germany, I think Poland is under Tusk is positioned very well to take a leading role at the moment, and Tusk is obviously playing a very strong position on Ukraine, and I think once Babis is elected, he will be pretty much alone in Central Europe in taking this stance. I mean, I just wanted to add one thing on this, which is that obviously on Ukraine, Babis is perhaps sort of hanging behind Orban, but on many of these other issues like the Green Deal, migration, this question of so-called sovereignty, all the Patriots for Europe grouping is kind of pushing on an open door at the moment, because as we are seeing inside the European Parliament, there is a growing shift to the right, and many of these things that the Patriots for Europe are pushing on, are talking about, are becoming much more popular among the right-wing parties. So I think they're not as isolated as they once were.
Thank you both very much. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your insight. And good night.
Thanks and good night.
Thank you.
This was On The Record. Thank you for watching. My name is Adam Jasa.